when you've got your document set up in Publisher, the first thing you should really do is decide on what background colour you're going to use for the document. So you'll need to consider what the purpose of the document is and what audience it's aimed at before you really kind of get stuck into that. But basically, once you've got a rough idea about what the audience is and what the purpose is, if you go to page design, and across here on the right hand side where it says background, you're already given some backgrounds as kind of template ones for you to easily use for yourself. What I suggest is, if you're going to use a background, you're better off using more of a simple solid colour than these gradient ones, because as you actually start to fill in your document, you'll find that as you type in that the darker, if you're using darker writing, and in the dark sections of the background it'll be hard to see, but in the light sections it'll be easier to see, so it's just a bit confusing for people to read. So if you can, avoid using colours which are opposite ends of the colour spectrum then. But if you're not happy with any of these here, if you click on more backgrounds, and then it gives you a choice to decide what colours you would like. So if you wanted to use one colour, you can just choose a particular colour from here. So I'm just going to use blue, and you can see down the bottom here it kind of gives you already some ideas if you want to be using a gradient, and you can knock the dark and light up. So, but again, as I said, that's probably a bit too extreme when you got white and blue and two different colours altogether, and then obviously blue and black, it is going to be difficult to read certain text over there. But somewhere in between where there's a slight difference in the colour, nothing too extreme, you can then decide what angle you want that gradient to be, select it and press OK, and then you've got a nice subtle kind of change in the colour there. And the other option with that as well on background, on more backgrounds, you can choose two colours, but as I said to you earlier, don't use for example a blue and then another colour which is completely different to blue. Just look for a darker version of that same blue then, so when you actually do your gradients, it's a kind of nice and subtle gradient through the document, so it does look a little bit fancier like that. Right, and if you want to add titles, then by all means you can insert text boxes and then type in your titles, but you've also got WordArt here on Publisher, and if I show you the options there, now some of them hopefully you'll be able to identify straight away as really not appropriate to you. So for example, these ones down here, because it's going to be difficult to read for the person who's actually looking at your document, and that's the last thing you want. You want to make things as easy as possible for that person to be able to access the information you're going to put on it. So what I always suggest is just to use a simple WordArt, type in your title, choose the font size, so the bigger the better in some respects. You can make it bold, italic, your decision to make, and then choose your font style. Now the only problem is with these font styles is, as you can see, they're not actually previewed here as you're looking at them, so you'll need to kind of maybe click on them one by one and find the one you're looking for, but I've already got one in mind, so I'm just going to find it somewhere down here on the list. There it is. And that's the font style I want to use for this particular title, because I'm aiming at a younger audience. I think that's quite appropriate for them. And when I press OK, I've got my WordArt, and it looks nothing fancy because it's just simply white, but I'm going to show you next how to edit that WordArt so it can look a little bit more appealing or better on the eye. So once I've actually got the WordArt selected, you'll notice that WordArt Tools appears here at the top, and if I've made a spelling mistake or I need to add more text to it, I can simply click on Edit Text, and it brings me back to this part here, and I can make the adjustments which need to be made, so I can change the font style if I needed to as well. You've also got spacing, so you can decide whether or not you want it to be stretched out a little bit, or if you want it to be very tight, so it's quite chunky. I'm just going to put it back to normal at this stage. And you can also decide if you want your text to be vertical or horizontal. And with this as well, you can also choose the colour. So it's already white, there is a slight border on it, and if I just zoom in on it, so we can see in a bit more detail as I start to make it, you can see there's a very faint grey border on it, and a little tiny bit of a shadow on it as well. So if I want to change the colour of it, I just simply click on Shape Fill and find whatever colour I want to use. And again, it's about finding something which is appropriate with your background and appropriate for the audience and the purpose of the document you're making. But just to show you how to do a couple of things, you could potentially put a picture inside. I don't see why you'd want to do that, because it would make the writing a bit hard. But you could also do gradients, and it does give you all these different ones here, which are okay, I suppose. But then there's more gradients. And just like you did with the page design earlier, the background colour, you can choose one colour for the background, and then you can decide if you want to have it dark or lighter, some kind of gradient. But if you choose two colours, and this is just an example, I'm not saying this is the way you should do it, but if you wanted to have like a fire, then if your theme of your document was bonfire night, then for example, you could have like a fire kind of colour in the background of your of your word art. So if I choose yellowy orange for the first colour, and then maybe a slightly darker orange for the second colour, maybe something along the lines of that one there then. And you can see they are slightly different. And if I choose my gradient as I've done before, click on that and press OK, and then it fills that up so it looks like it's a kind of a warm sunset fiery kind of look on it. You can also add borders. As I said, there is a very faint border on there. If I click on the black line, I think it's already a black line on there. And again, that's not going to change if I choose the colour. So what I'll need to do on the weight of it, if I just make it a bit chunkier, so I'll go up to 6, which is a maximum size, and then it does kind of a nice effect on that as well. And whenever I do titles, again, depending on what the context of the document is, I always like to add shadows onto mine to make them look like as if they're jumping off the document a little bit. And I tend to use one of these ones here, none of these. Well, you could use those. There's nothing bad about them, but that's just my preference. And then you can decide here how far you want the shadow to be, or how far you want the title to look as if it's actually jumping off the page. Then I'm just going to change my shape back to a normal white colour, so I prefer that way. It looks better with the background colour in that respect. You can do 3D effects, but a lot of the time, like a couple of them are not too bad, these subtle ones, but a lot of them, like these ones here, they just, I don't know, it just doesn't look quite right. But then it's your decision to make, I suppose, and it depends on what document you're making. If I just zoom back out to 100% so we can see what it looks like when it comes to printing time, then I think that's a title which stands out and it is quite effective as well.